The storm that raged across the beach house mirrored the chaos brewing inside Luna Nozawa's mind. Her escape from the prison she had been trapped in for so long was not an act of desperation. It was the culmination of a plan carefully hatched and executed with a singular purpose: to make Will Spencer pay. To make him see the world the way she saw it: fractured, manipulated, full of lies. Luna had once been the sweet, naive intern who had captured Will's attention, but that had changed. The innocent facade she wore had shattered long ago, replaced by a woman willing to destroy everything in her path to claim what she believed was hers. Her prison break was calculated, the culmination of weeks of planning. She had used every resource at her disposal: seduction, manipulation, and, most crucially, fear. Her time behind bars had only sharpened her mind. The lies she had fed the world had transformed into weapons she wielded with ruthless precision. Her eyes were set on Will Spencer, the man she once thought she could love, but now only saw as a means to an end. He had no idea what was coming for him. None of them did. As Luna stared at the photo of Will and Electra Forrester laughing together in their new home, the smile on her lips was as cold as the ice in her veins. That was supposed to be her life. That was supposed to be her future. The thought of them, happy, untouchable, pushed Luna to the edge of insanity. She had come so close before so many times, but this time she would make sure they paid the price. Will Spencer would not get away with abandoning her, with choosing Electra over her. Not after everything she had done for him, not after everything she had sacrificed. The plan was already in motion. Luna's escape was just the beginning. She had planned this to the finest detail, and every move had been choreographed. It would be the final act of defiance, the moment when she would break free from the chains that had bound her for so long. The question was not whether she would escape, but what she would leave behind in her wake. At the Spencer family's beach house, the night was filled with a false sense of security. Will and Electra, in their naivety, thought they were safe, that the worst of the drama had passed. They celebrated their new life, free from the chaos Luna had caused, unaware that their past was closing in on them. But that calm, that fleeting happiness, was about to be shattered by the past they had tried so hard to forget. As the lights flickered in the distance, Luna watched from her prison cell, staring at the photo of them. The storm in her heart mirrored the one outside. The world she had once known was slipping from her grasp, and she wasn't going to let it go without a fight. The escape was no surprise. Television soap operas had played this card countless times, and yet, Luna's was different. This was not a simple escape. It was her final act. The drama was only beginning. She had orchestrated this moment carefully, and the stakes were higher than ever. She wasn't just running away from prison. She was running toward her final confrontation with the ones who had betrayed her. The one she thought she could trust, the one she thought she could love, was about to learn just how far she would go to get what she wanted. But as she prepared for her ultimate act, Luna was unaware of the growing tension on the other side of town. Steffi Forrester, Finn Finnegan, and the Spencer family were all dealing with the aftermath of her actions. They thought she was gone. They thought the threat had been neutralized. But the truth was, they had no idea what was coming for them. Luna's escape was only the beginning, and her return was inevitable. The only question was how far the damage would spread before it all came crashing down. Luna had left a trail of destruction in her wake. 2 lives were lost: Hollis, the bartender, and her own father, Tom Starr. They had been murdered without mercy, their lives snuffed out in a way that was too cruel to comprehend. But it didn't end there. Luna had crossed every line imaginable. She had drugged and raped Will Spencer, the man she thought she could build a future with. And now, carrying his child, she somehow believed that this would bring them together. It was madness, pure and simple. But that was who Luna had become, a villain so twisted that there was no redemption in sight. Her manipulations didn't stop there. She stalked Hayes Forrester, a young child, using his teacher as a pawn to draw Steffi into a trap. She had tried to kill Steffi twice, gunned down Liam Spencer, and when Bill Spencer refused to forgive her after her fake prison beating, she realized that the only choice left was to escape. Luna had crossed every line, and there was no coming back. She wasn't the kind of villain you could redeem. She was the kind of villain you had to eliminate. As the manhunt for Luna intensified, the question of who would end her reign of terror loomed large. Bill Spencer's first instinct was clear. Luna had hurt his family, and he would make her pay. He had no qualms about using any means necessary to put an end to her. But there was another question. Would Bill kill her out of vengeance for what she did to Will, or would he let the law do its work? His history with Luna was complicated, but one thing was certain. If she got too close to Will again, Bill would stop at nothing to protect his son. Steffi, too, had her own demons to confront. The woman who had once promised to protect her family from harm was now standing on the edge of a moral abyss. Luna's return threatened everything Steffi had built. The life she had started with Finn, the family she had fought to keep intact. And for Steffi, this wasn't just about self-preservation. Luna had promised to ruin her life, and now Steffi was faced with the harsh reality that she might have to make a choice: eliminate Luna or risk losing everything. The stakes were higher than ever, and Steffi knew it. Then there was Lee Finnegan. Cold, calculating, and fiercely protective of her family, Lee had once saved Luna's life, only to be betrayed in the end. She saw Luna as an ungrateful pawn, someone who would destroy everything she held dear if given the chance. Lee was the type of person who could make the hard choices without hesitation, and if Luna threatened her family again, there was no question in her mind. Luna had to be stopped. And then there was Sheila Carter, who watched it all from the shadows. In a twisted sense, Sheila had always been Luna's greatest ally and her worst enemy. She had manipulated Luna just as much as Luna had manipulated everyone else. Now, as Luna's escape became the talk of the town, Sheila began to wonder if Luna's final act of defiance would be her own undoing. Would Luna's actions force Sheila to take drastic measures? Or would Sheila find a way to use Luna's escape to her advantage? In this game of chess, there was only room for one queen, and Sheila was determined that it would be her. The stage was set for a deadly showdown. Luna's escape had unleashed a chain of events that no one could control. Bill, Steffi, Lee, and Sheila were all playing their parts, each with their own motivations, their own plans. The tension was palpable. The stakes were life and death. And as Luna hid in the shadows, preparing for her final confrontation, the question remained: who would be the one to end her reign of terror? The only certainty was that Luna's story would end in violence, and only one villain would survive. Daphne Rose had arrived in Los Angeles with a mission, one steeped in manipulation, secrecy, and, ultimately, betrayal. She had been hired by Steffi Forrester, her best friend, to carry out a seemingly simple but morally complex task: to seduce Carter Walton and separate him from Hope Logan. The plan was clear: infiltrate his life, charm him, and exploit his vulnerabilities to create the wedge that Steffi desperately needed in her pursuit to take back control over Forrester Creations. It was a task that played to Daphne's strengths: her beauty, her charisma, and most notably, her ability to manipulate with a smile. But, as often happens in these tangled webs of desire and deceit, Daphne found herself caught in her own trap. The transformation from mere pawn to a woman torn between love and duty was not immediate, but it came swiftly. As she spent more time with Carter, Daphne felt an unexpected connection, one that went beyond the surface-level flirtations and tactics. Carter, with his unwavering loyalty to Hope and his deep love for her, was not just a conquest in Daphne's eyes. He was a man with his own heartbreak, his own vulnerabilities, and as she got to know him, something shifted in her heart. What started as a game soon became much more complicated. The more Daphne tried to convince herself that she was only doing this for Steffi, the more she found herself drawn to Carter's genuine kindness and emotional depth. She could see past the surface, past the facade he presented to the world, and into a man who was struggling with his own feelings of inadequacy, unsure of where his heart truly belonged. Daphne couldn't deny that she had begun to care for him, perhaps even more than she had intended. As the weeks went on, Her mission no longer felt like a job, but a betrayal of her own growing emotions. Despite the undeniable connection between them, Daphne kept her true feelings hidden, afraid that if Carter ever knew the truth, he would never look at her the same way again. She was still bound by the lies she had woven to gain his trust. But eventually, reality caught up with her. Carter, who had been planning a future with hope, realized he couldn't ignore the pull he felt toward Daphne anymore. The seeds of doubt that had been planted had grown into something real. When he ended his engagement with Hope, it was clear that his feelings for Daphne had surpassed whatever he had once shared with her rival. But the question remained, could he truly trust her, knowing how she had been hired to play this dangerous game in the first place? Daphne wasn't naive. She knew that Carter's decision to end his engagement to Hope wasn't just about her. It was a culmination of his own emotional turmoil, of the fractured relationship he had with Hope, and the realization that maybe he had been holding on to something that wasn't meant to be. But as much as Carter might have freed himself from Hope, Daphne knew that her past, the very reason she had been sent into his life, was a barrier that couldn't be ignored. If she wanted him to fully embrace the life they could have together, she would need to come clean, not just about her feelings for him, but about the reasons she had come into his life in the first place. This internal struggle was maddening for Daphne. On one hand, she knew she had finally found someone who understood her, someone who saw her as more than the manipulative woman she had pretended to be. On the other hand, revealing the truth would likely destroy everything they had started to build together. She couldn't live with the constant weight of deceit hanging over them, but she was terrified of losing him. Meanwhile, Carter, still grappling with the dissolution of his engagement and the fallout of his feelings for Daphne, began to question everything. His instincts told him there was more to Daphne's story, that the woman he had fallen for wasn't the same one he had initially met. She had changed him, made him see love in a new light, but at what cost? Was she truly the woman he wanted to be with, or was she still playing a part in a larger scheme? For Daphne, the stakes were incredibly high. She was no longer just a player in a game. She was a woman at a crossroads, facing a choice between a future with Carter and the consequences of her past actions. Would Carter accept her for who she truly was, or would he only see the version of her that had been hired to tear apart his world? Daphne was a woman trapped between love and guilt, between the life she had built for herself and the life she now longed to have with Carter. Then, there was the looming question of Daphne's past. While the chemistry between her and Carter was undeniable, her secret, her true reason for coming to Los Angeles, remained an unspoken weight between them. Her time in Paris, her mysterious history in the world of music, and the persona she had crafted to escape a life she had tried to leave behind, all remained in the shadows. Daphne had crafted a new identity, one far removed from the woman who had once dreamed of fame and fortune in the music industry. But that past was never truly gone. The upcoming revelations about her past promised to be just as explosive as the emotional turmoil she was already experiencing. As Daphne and Carter's relationship deepened, so did the tension. Carter, still reeling from the disillusionment with Hope and the promises broken in their engagement, found himself drawn to Daphne not just for her beauty and allure, but for her vulnerability. But the question that haunted him, one he could never voice to her, was whether he could truly forgive her for the role she had played in his broken relationship with Hope. Could he forgive her for the manipulation, for being part of a scheme designed to destroy someone he loved? The emotional tension between them was palpable, each word and touch loaded with the fear of what would happen if the truth came out. Daphne, on the other hand, had reached a point where she couldn't pretend anymore. She loved Carter, truly loved him, but she needed him to understand that her actions had been driven by a deeper, darker purpose. She had not come into his life with a heart full of love. She had come with a mission, a job, and somewhere along the way, she had lost herself in the very game she had created. For Daphne, the ultimate test wasn't whether Carter could accept her. It was whether she could truly accept herself, the woman who had been both the architect of his heartache and the source of his healing. As their relationship unfolded, Daphne knew there were still so many unanswered questions about her past. What had driven her to abandon her singing career, to leave behind the life she had once dreamed of. What had happened to her in Paris that had shaped her into the woman she had become? And most importantly, what would Carter think when he discovered the whole truth? The slow-burning tension between them finally reached its breaking point when Daphne revealed, in a tearful confession, the truth about her motives for coming to Los Angeles. Carter, with his own complicated history, understood the need for honesty, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about love. There was something deeper at play, something bigger than either of them had realized. It was a painful realization, but Carter knew he needed to come to terms with it, not just for Daphne, but for himself. The question wasn't whether they could be together, it was whether they could face their shared pasts without tearing each other apart. Daphne's journey in the bold and the beautiful was never meant to be one of simple love. It was one of self-discovery, redemption, and ultimately, confronting the darkness of her own choices. But in the end, her relationship with Carter was more than just about love. It was about forgiveness. A forgiveness she would have to give to herself first before she could ever ask for it from him. The questions about her past remained, hovering like ghosts between them. Yet, as they navigated this uncharted territory, one thing became clear.